Hey guys, welcome to Debrief. I came across this press release. I'll be covering it later on in our weekly news segment. It's from the U.S. Justice Department, dated February 7th of 2022. Basically, it states a former Alabama Department of Corrections lieutenant was sentenced to 9 years in prison for failing to intervene in an unlawful inmate assault. Okay, this guy got almost a decade in the federal penitentiary for not for throwing fists, but failing to intervene. According to the U.S. Justice Department press release, Willie Burks III was convicted by a federal jury back in July of 2021 for failing to stop an officer under his command from assaulting an inmate at Alabama's Elmore Correctional Facility. The Justice Department had claimed at trial that the former Correctional Sergeant Ulysses Oliver Jr. took a non-resisting inmate into an observation room handcuffed, where he physically punished the inmate for bringing in contraband to the prison. The former sergeant was alleged to have struck the victim. I love how they use the term victim. You're going to pick up a lot here. Just keep listening. I didn't write this stuff, so. Struck the victim multiple times with his fist and feet, and then used his collapsible baton to repeatedly strike the victim. Not the client, not the inmate, not the convict, whatever you want to call the guy, the victim. That's what the Justice Department refers to the guy as. Burks, his lieutenant, allegedly stood by and said, hey, it's fair. Two other officers, Brianna Mosley and Leon Williams, pled guilty in May and July of 2019. That's a few years back. The feds, they don't play around. They're going to sit there and start at the bottom and work their way up. But these two officers ended up having to take some type of plea deal for failing to intervene to stop the assaults. Their sergeant and lieutenant are doing, okay? You know, the feds, they put on the pressure. If you've ever had to deal with the feds, it's something else. You don't want to play with it. This is why you want to listen to this episode and pay close attention, because we're going to give you some good tools how not to get in this situation. You know, when you're working in corrections, you have a fundamental duty. Remember this. Fundamental duty. It's a lot of words, a lot of fancy stuff to uphold constitutional values. I'm not trying to sound like a lawyer here. This is stuff really every correctional officer should know. Do we all know it? No, we don't. You know, many times, you know, it can be challenging. You go in there, you get spit on, you get chunked on. And for those of y'all who don't work in corrections, chunking is where an inmate takes urine, feces, and other bodily fluids. And I mean other bodily fluids. Use your imagination. They take it, they mix it up, put it in a cup, milk carton. A milk carton, we refer to that as a grenade. And, you know, they toss it, throw it on the officer. And that's a smell you'll never forget. It's just awful. And if you ever work any type of ADSEG, special housing units, you're going to encounter this stuff. Or the classic, sucker punch. You know, inmate just comes and knocks you. Next thing you know, you're seeing Tweety birds and stars. You didn't know what the heck. You know, this guy comes and just hits you one time. He has his hands up. He's laying down on the ground and putting his hands behind his back. Yeah, that's called a catch-out move. And these guys, they know that you can't hit them back. They already know that. They know that it's illegal for you to knock them back, you know, even though that they just assaulted you. They know the law better than most officers, and you can't touch them. You can't knock them back, you know. And, you know, officers will get themselves in a wreck many times over these sucker punches. And, you know, sometimes you just have to be able to go in and walk away from it. It's deplorable. It's unwarranted, it's cowardly assaults. And when I say walk away, I don't mean just ignore it. I mean, obviously, you're going to put the guy in some type of handcuffs, restraints. You're going to restrain this guy, but you have to be able to put pen to paper and be able to walk away. Yes, it's 100% cowardly. And sadly, some of these assaults, it has nothing to do with the action of the officers. Sometimes it's just unwarranted. It's a catch-out move. You know, this guy might owe a gambling debt, and he doesn't have the money to pay for it, so he'll go up and, him being a Cowboys fan, I'm going to pick on you Cowboy fans out there. Yeah, the Cowboys may have lost that weekend, and he owes a lot of money to some guys, and he doesn't want to get beat down. So next guy who walks through the door in uniform, Department of Corrections uniform, he smacks him, slaps him, and then lays it down. And that's a tough thing to deal with, and I've had to deal with it many times. You know, you want to get yours, but you know, either the guy's behind. Most of the time, it's behind a door where you can't get yours. You know, legally, you're going to get charged, and you need to understand the principles of constitutional values. You know, ranking officers. You know, as ranking officers, whether you're currently one or you're looking at becoming one in the future, you know, you have a duty to look out after your staff's physical and emotional well-being. But you have to also look out after their legal well-being. This is something that is totally missed a lot in corrections. You know, breaking the law is not a good way of ensuring your staff goes home at the end of the day. You know, 9 years in the federal penitentiary, you're not going home. You never want your staff ever, as a supervisor, to end up in the hospital, the morgue, and definitely not prison. This is something that's totally avoidable. It really is. I mean, I get it. You know, the inmates, they will push buttons, they will test you, they will do some horrendous stuff. But both this lieutenant and this sergeant, they failed their officers miserably. They failed themselves miserably. They failed their families miserably. This guy is going off for 9 years. You know, if he has a 9-year-old child, that kid's going to be an adult by the time he gets out. Think about that. That's some pretty serious stuff. Pretty serious life-changing stuff. You know, there's those in corrections who will try to defend these guys' actions. It doesn't get any clearer than they broke the law. It wasn't just the Justice Department that said it. It was a jury of their peers. 12 people got together and said, these guys broke the law. They are now inmates. You know, if you don't believe in the law, you're in the wrong profession. Wrong profession. Go look for something else. You don't have to agree with the law, but you need to have a fundamental value that breaking the law is kind of a bad ideal. You know, I retired after almost 3 decades of corrections, law enforcement, and public service. I've been to plenty of officers' funeral, line of death, duty, murders. Okay, so I don't want anybody to preach to me about what the law is or how they feel it. Go talk to your state legislature or your congressman. Get it changed if you're so hurt by it. But, you know, don't come to me, because I believe you have to follow the law. You're not the congressman. You're not the state representative. And until you get that position or convince those people to change the law is the law. As a former correctional union president, I used to have to go clean up a lot of officer messes. Just a lot of it was stupid stuff. One thing I'll say, throwing fist gets a lot of ranking officers in trouble. A lot of them. Sometimes it can be avoided. You know, these guys that are locked up, they have 24/7 to think about how they're going to get under your skin. Inmates love nothing more than to point out the flaws of the criminal justice system. Oh, it's not 100% fair. Well, duh. Of course it's not, but it's better than street justice or feudal warlord systems, okay? The jury system, the police systems we have are the best thing ever invented, okay? Does it need to be tweaked up? Yes, of course it does. Definitely does. Needs a lot of tweaking, but the system itself works if you let it work. Inmates, though, inmates will find cracks in the system. They want to be able to go wedge those cracks and break it down. It's a system they utilize to justify their own hypocrisy. Think about that. The system that convicted them, put them in prison. Now they can say, well, look, it's broken. Broken. How can a broken system put me in prison? When I started corrections over a decade ago, child molesters, they'd get killed in prison or beat down all the time. Seriously, I mean, these guys, there wasn't no Prison Rape Elimination Act and all these federal laws and stuff. It was a gladiator farm, okay? So, oftentimes the inmates, they target child molesters, like I said. Is a system of hypocrisy among inmates to justify their own horrendous acts by targeting child molesters and sex offenders. And most people, for the most part, aren't opposed. But you have to take a step back and realize ethically, morally, some of these convicts, inmates, clients, whatever you want to call them, are bigger monsters when it comes to their own reign of terror. If you want to meet the devil, there's plenty of demons locked up. If you want to become the devil, let those demons get inside your head and you will become the devil. I've seen some of my own co-workers become the devil. Years of abuse tears and wears people down. PTSD, suicides, divorces. That's the reality of working corrections. There is no such thing as keeping the home life and the work life separate. I have no clue who came up with that concept, but they obviously never worked the same job I did. I've seen my own co-workers, officers I supervise, end up committing suicide, engage in horrendous acts, murders. I had an officer worked with two of these officers. They were married. This guy goes and murders her one day. Just horrendously murders her, and I got to deal with him a couple of years later. He comes back through the prison, and recently I saw another one of my coworkers on social media, a sheriff escorting him out. Just got a life sentence for killing his girlfriend. This place, I can't emphasize, you have to seal those cracks. You can't let inmates pry those cracks open and find the flaws and weaknesses, because they're going to do that. You walk in any prison in the country, you're going to find out several things. Either you're the hottest thing since sliced bread, or you have Dumbo ears and a big nose. Inmates are going to attempt to exploit your weaknesses. Some of your coworkers end up with the same mentality as the inmates do, and they start becoming institutionalized beings. One thing I can say is my sense of reality when it comes to what I saw my first day in prison at the OB Ellis unit in Huntsville, several decades ago, hasn't changed. Prisons and the people institutionalized in the system, they're screwed up. And notice I didn't say inmates. The system also institutionalizes officers too. Remember, inmates, they'll emotionally try to justify their own hypocrisy by prying open the cracks in the system. It not only empowers them, but it gives them a sense of self-righteousness in the fact that, they can justify their own flawed beliefs by saying, hey, look at the system, it's broke down. But like this lieutenant and sergeant, they failed to realize some basic concepts. When you wrestle a pig in the mud, you're entering the pig's world. You're going to get dirty. The pigs don't mind the mud. You have to be careful what fights and causes you pursue. Never let your emotions be the driving force. Let me say that in another way. Never let your emotions be the driving force behind your decision making. And that's what this sergeant and this lieutenant did. Mark Twain one time said, "Never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with their experience." Think about that. These guys are pros at it. That's a great concept to remember when it comes to not getting beat in prison. Never let a convict's dream of wedging the system into pieces drive you to incompetent actions. Now, a former lieutenant, a sergeant, and 2 officers are now doing prison time. The inmates involved are probably making bank off of this. Whatever settlement the state of Alabama gave them under a non-disclosed agreement was probably pretty good. They're not going to tell everybody, hey, we gave this inmate this amount of money, but let me put it this way. I'll take a couple of bruises and a little bit of a beating any day of the week versus giving me a decade in prison. And these guys, you got to think that after this, not only are they going to bank, but they get bragging rights. They get to say, hey, look at what the system did to me. They're the ones breaking the law. And if you were to ask this sergeant, lieutenant today, was it worth it? I highly doubt that they're going to tell you, oh yeah, they'd do it again. They're going to regret every moment of it. 9 years in prison, almost a decade. That's that's regrettable. And in the end, were the inmates really hurt that bad? Did they deliver some great street justice? Like I said, I'll gladly take a couple of hits versus a decade away from my family, friends, pets, my home, my own personal shower, bathroom, kitchen, get to eat what I want to eat. This is a decision that you have to make before you start your 8 and close that gate. You got to keep yourself on course to the higher roads. And remember, the lower roads will get you stuck in the mud. And remember, the pigs like the mud.